Right?
Wow.
Good evening. It's Thursday, June 18th, 6 p.m. and welcome to the Littleton Planning Board meeting. I'd like to go ahead and get this meeting started. We are holding this meeting virtually through Zoom. Have a couple quick little announcements. Get to do this every time. So the town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order starting on March 19th, 2020, order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. So for people that join the Zoom meeting, they are set so that their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who can join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. Okay, and now we can resume to our regular scheduled program. All votes will be conducted by roll call. So members, that means we need you to say your name and then yes or no, so it is clear for the record. The planning board members participating remotely include myself, Anna Houston, Chair, Elisa Laterzo, Vice Chair, Mark Montanari, Clerk, and members Jerry Portante and Jeff Yates. Hope you're all well. Thanks for watching. Okay, so tonight's agenda includes transfer development rights presentation at 6:05 p.m., board business, with public input, board member updates, minutes, bills, and payroll. We will then at 7 o'clock hear from Cooper Farm Estates for a bond reduction request and street acceptance process. We will then hear from Weber Village regarding affordable units. We will then hear from Durkee Farm Estates, K Estates regarding bond adjustment request as well, lot release request. And then at 7:30 p.m. we have an A&R on Uplands Road, and then we can adjourn. So welcome to our guests tonight. We have Mark Rassicott and Josh Fiala from MAPC, and we are here tonight to talk about transfer of development rights. Jerry, as the project lead on this, do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started?
Yeah, I mean, just to set the table, tonight's discussion is go a little bit more detail about some of the ratios that are used to drive transfers between sending units and receiving units. I don't know if we need to give a background. There's a couple of attendees, but just so everybody understands what transfer development rights are, it's a tool, it's a planning tool to allow sort of sensitive agricultural and other scenic areas to remain in their current state, but still allow them to sell development rights to be used somewhere else in town that's been designated as a receiving area that can handle that additional density. And the topic tonight is really going to talk about how do you get from A to B between negotiating between a sender and a receiver, and how that ratio might work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark and Josh.
Thank you, Jerry. Actually, Josh will begin the PowerPoint program tonight. Josh, do you happen to have that up on your screen that you could share, or do you want me to share?
I do. I can start sharing now.
Okay.
All right, give me a thumbs up if everyone can see that all right. Good deal. All right, so this is what our maybe third presentation series. board. So we're happy with you again this evening. Thank you for taking the time on the agenda for us this night, and we'll dive right into it. If I can get my screen cooperating with me. Interesting.
And we have 45 minutes on the agenda for this item. Thank you.
Jerry, what are you eating?
Fruit.
Blueberries.
So, Josh, if it's not working for you, I can share it from here.
Yeah, my cursor has disappeared and I can't seem to advance slides, so
Oh, that's fine.
I'm a little stuck on the title.
Let me-
I actually can't.
You got to stop sharing them. Someone's got to take it away
Yeah.
from you.
Oh, there you go. My cursor has reappeared now with.
Oh, well, that's because we're now sharing my screen.
Yep, I explained it.
Help view, what are we, view?
Yeah, view. That'd be great.
Come on. Why am I having trouble finding how to show this?
What?
Go down in the corner, right-hand corner. There's the little, looks like a projection screen just to the left of the slider with the magnifying glass.
Are you trying to do presentation mode?
Yeah.
Hit F5.
Woohoo!
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's always good to have a backup. I think I've had more technical difficulties in front of your board than any others. I've only been with you guys 2 or 3 times. All right, so Marion,
Okay,
if you
and I'll
keep-
just ask LCTV to watch the list of participants in case there's hand raised, because I don't see that anymore.
Of course.
Thank you.
if you could advance us the slide, Marion. All right, so as Jerry was describing, so a brief rundown on the TDR program. So it's transfer development rights, effectively has dual purposes to protect farmland and forest land in the town while enabling an increase in density of development in other areas where it makes sense, near transit, the Littleton commuter rail station, the village, or other denser developed areas. The program is market driven, so nothing happens unless developers can make a profit by utilizing the program. So that's the what we've been actually spending a lot of time looking at is some market-based numbers and spreadsheets, and we'll walk you through those this evening. We told you about the process we would use in previous presentations, and now we've actually got some calculations behind us and have some results to share. So a core feature of all of that work and of those calculations is the transfer ratio that Jerry described, which is effectively the rate at which sending units turned into receiving units. And again, that's all based on our trying to understand the real estate market for those land transfers. Next slide, please. Thank you. So that all-important transfer ratio, the process that we've used to determine and to analyze that and then determine a recommendation or a range of recommendations is to look at the sending area and the receiving area separately and then to compare the two. So we've been looking for a wholesale value of development rights in the farm and forest sending areas. And we'll describe in a little more detail in the next slide what that means. But effectively, you're not purchasing the land outright, so you don't have complete control over it. You don't have title of the land in the end. You have purchased the development rights. So it's not the same as valuing land on the open market for, say, like raw acreage in the town of Littleton. And then the receiving areas, what we've done to try to understand the marketplace better is done research on existing assumptions in terms of revenue and costs. So cost per square footage, all of the costs in terms of land development, building development, developers fees, et cetera. But then also the revenue side of that equation. So current rents, both for commercial space and residential space, and then put in a bunch of assumptions that make that seem realistic in terms of the costs and the benefits of that type of development, all to derive a land value. So if you build that and then have it as a revenue generating source, whatever that development program is, what is the result of that in terms of how much you could pay for land to enable creation of that development program? So that's the residual land value. And then by comparing those two and looking at those two exercises a number of different ways, we'd been able to determine a recommendation for a transfer ratio and understand the relationship between those two much better. Next slide again. So a little more details on the sending area. So again, this is the wholesale valuation of development rights. We're trying to keep this as simple as possible and use methods which are coming from a trusted source. And I think those two ambitions point directly towards your very own Littleton tax assessor, who I spoke with and had a very good conversation. She's helped us with data collection for this effort. And we basically, through the numbers that she compiles annually, have taken a look at properties in town that are within the Chapter 61 tax program. And that program effectively, for tax benefits, reduces the ability to use the land for certain development type uses. It can be used for a lot of things, but not developed outright under that restricted program. So you're preserving agricultural land, forest land, and recreational land under that tax program. The tax assessor keeps track of the full value of those parcels and then the value of those parcels once put under Chapter 61 restrictions. And effectively, if you look at all those different areas of Chapter 61 that exist and the different valuations that have occurred under the assessor, they average out to $10,880 per acre is the valuation of that restriction. And that's 2020 numbers. So this is basically current figures. The size of a development, so the minimum lot size within those areas is 40,000 square feet. It's all in the residential areas of the town. Most of the town, in fact, is under that zoning area. And we figured that you would need potentially a little more land than that to provide access, an access road, provide other maybe stormwater or wastewater drainage type scenarios to have a development. And so a little bit more than that, more than 40 square feet or 40,000 square feet, coming out to about just over an acre, 1.09 acres. So therefore, the value of a unit of development of that 1.09 acres is a little more than the 10,880, and that comes in at 11,889. So that's one transfer development right. So if you want to purchase a little more than an acre of land, that's farmland or agricultural land in the town, and transfer that development right to somewhere else like Littleton Station or the village, then the value of that unit is 11,889, and that's an assessor's number. The next slide, please. And here's a depiction of where many of those Chapter 61 and 61A lands are occurring in the town from your most recent open space and recreation plan. Just to give you a feel for what the numbers I just showed you, what lands are derived from, or what lands are creating those numbers. Next slide, please.
Can you, I was going to say, make that a little bigger, the last slide. No, you can't. That's all right. Go ahead, skip it. I figured it out.
And then this is the zoning map, probably familiar to you all on the board, that shows the areas of the residential R district. That's where that 40,000 square foot minimum lot size is. And the arrows point to industrial areas or other areas in the town where they would effectively be the receiving areas. So the sending areas generalized are the yellow residential zoned district, and then the red areas or the, I guess, green areas or gray areas would be the potential receiving areas. Next slide, please. And then this is just you all know this well too, but just to highlight that minimum lot area, which is just taken from the zoning tables. Now we'll go into the receiving area. And this is a little more involved calculation, but we think we've got it to a point where it's providing results and outputs which are similar to what you're experiencing in the marketplace today in terms of what development you are seeing or not seeing. So what we did was define several build-out scenarios, and those build-out scenarios are based on varying development limitations. So looking at zoning restrictions, looking at septic flow, thinking about different development programs. So whether it be an office program, warehouse program, mixed use with a commercial ground floor, and then a story of residence above or 2 stories of residence above, and thinking about the variations in those. And so then each of those development programs have a per acreage build out program, which is based upon those restrictions. So how many square feet of commercial can you develop? How many units of residential can you develop, for example? Which the residential units are not allowed under zoning in those districts today, by the way. Industrial districts, I should clarify. And then we've taken each of those development scenarios and attached to them consistent and market-based assumptions for the revenue and cost portions of those development programs. So everything you need to put into the property to make that development program a reality, and then what you would get as a benefit in terms of rents, commercially, rents residential. If you were to sell the units, there's a different set of calculations for those. And those are all based upon sources like current real estate reports from the sub-region that Littleton's in, your own market analyses by RKG that were drafted and created recently for some of your other planning work. Jerry, did you have a hand up? Or?
No.
Oh, sorry. And then the residual land value is effectively, the spreadsheet has all of the variables inputted. So we've taken a position on every number except for land value. And so if all of those numbers on the revenue side and the cost side create a negative land value, then effectively that's telling you that that particular development program isn't actually feasible because you don't have any money left over to pay for land. In this case, for transfer of development rights, we need the money left over to be able to pay for land, but also to pay for the purchase of those development rights for residential units. So we did find that several of those scenarios were positive. One that was positive was the warehouse scenario. So I think that's indicative of what you've been seeing in some of the projects which have been currently coming online in Littleton. And we've also found that the mixed use scenarios where you have office with varying degrees of density or height over that office ground floor with residential units were also viable with a positive residual land value. So offices alone, under the varying incarnations of offices, whether they be less restricted by septic or more restricted by septic, all of the solo office type development programs were not feasible, which I think is also reflecting what you're seeing today. Onto the mixed use scenarios, which are the focus really of what we're trying to get at. We tested under 2 densities. One was 10 units per acre and the other was 15 units per acre. The 10 units per acre was just about viable. It is viable, but accounting for the transfer of those development rights to get 10 units per acre, the amount that you'd have to pay, so the $11,889 per unit times 10, plus having enough land enough value to purchase land in an amount that's roughly equal to some of the land which is available and assessed in Littleton today. It looks like that could just work out. So it's not like a huge home run, but it just looks like it pencils out according to our calculations. At 15 units per acre, because the increments of development actually, when you add more units and particularly more density of units, the development costs don't escalate as quickly as your revenue escalates when you're adding more and more units that you can sell for the same amount. The 15 units per acre actually looks quite favorable So we have some conclusions that we can draw from that, and that'll be in the part of the presentation Mark's talking to. A few just things to point out in these assumptions and calculations. We did assume 10% affordability in these calculations. We've assumed, I think pretty realistic and fair market-based assumptions that we've gone back and checked and triple checked all the assumptions and calculations. So we're at this point feeling pretty good about it all. And we can share those spreadsheets if you'd like as well, but we weren't going to focus on the dizzying numbers this evening. Tamarin, if you could skip on to the next slide. So with that, here we're starting to turn toward recommendations now, and then Mark will have a few slides that help kind of give you the commentary around this. But it looks like if you go with that 10 unit per acre mixed use development scenario, that it really it will bear is a 1-to-1 ratio. It wouldn't bear more than that. So you wouldn't be asking a developer to pay more than the current market value, according to the assessor, of that development right from one location of town to the other. At a density of 15 units per acre, it does appear that there may be more flexibility to think about that. So we'll have to judge in your reaction if how complicated we want to get with these types of regulations. But there would be potential to have maybe a tiered benefit that could think about the difference between what's happening in the 10 per unit per acre and the 15 unit per acre. But I'll let Mark get into that a little bit more on the next couple slides. Mark, I'll hand it over to you if you're able to.
Yes, sorry about that. I didn't realize I was still muted.
No problem.
There were several things that the board had wanted us to do, one of which was to provide an example of how this might work. Another was to look at the potential number of units that could be generated in the sending area and about how many units we could absorb in the receiving areas. So the first thing here is an example. We made an assumption that somebody might pick up a 3-acre site within the receiving area, which we're just calling right now the train station receiving area. At a density of units of 10 per acre, that's 30 units of residential. Based on the build out, where we were assuming that the regulations that were similar to Littleton Common would be in place as far as parking and heights and percent lot coverage, that sort of thing. Along with the 10 units, you could probably get somewhere on the order of 20,000 square feet of commercial space and still be able to fit your parking, be able to fit your stormwater areas, and be able to fit your required green space on the site. So if we made the assumption that this was a 1-to-1 ratio, the development would therefore require 30 transferable development rights. And what does that mean? At a minimum, a developer would need to go purchase a conservation restriction on the equivalent of 30 development rights in the sending area. That's a minimum of about 33 acres of farm and forest, assuming it's 100% upland. If you start mixing in wetland and wetland buffers, then there's a reduction in the yield, and you would need to, the developer would need to have an increased amount of land that is preserved. So this is, roughly the figures. For 30 development units, you'd wind up with 33 to maybe 35 acres preserved. Now, we had talked about a cash in lieu of potential as well at one point. If an individual could not find a landowner who wanted to sell their development rights when the developer, wanted to build, we had talked about the potential of a cash donation or a cash payment to the town of Littleton, that would then go into an account which the town could then use to acquire development rights where the town saw fit. So under this scenario, what we were suggesting was that if it was based on a 1-to-1 ratio, then 30 units at the $11,890 that we estimated per unit based upon the assessor's figures, that's about $356,000 that would be available to the town to use, as I said, to buy development rights elsewhere. Now, we can talk about whether this is more appropriate to be 1x or 1.5x or 2x under a couple scenarios as we go forward. But right now, all I'll say is as Josh has said, at the 10 units per acre level in the receiving area, we think that the developer could probably afford about this amount of money, maybe a little bit more, because there's a little bit of, there's less of a factor for them that they don't have to go negotiate. So they might be able to actually afford more than this, maybe 1.5 times. The other question is, of course, whether or not the town thinks this is enough money to get in exchange for the 30 development rights. We can talk about that again in a minute. Maren, if you could advance the slide. So the question of the total potential number of development units that can be transferred. In the sending areas, as of FY20, there's approximately 1,064 acres under Chapter 61, which is the Forest Land Assessment Program, and 61A, which is the Agricultural Lands Assessment Program. We did not include land that was in the 61B, which is the Recreation Lands Program. That is partially because we thought that the town's interest was more in the preservation of farm and forest, and also partially because there tends to be a little bit more value in the camps and the recreation lands, and we didn't want to have that skewing the data. So assuming, for instance, there's 70% upland, and I have not looked at this on a GIS map. I just kind of quickly scanned and thought, okay, roughly this, let's call it 70% upland. If it's 70% upland, that's 745 acres of uplands that could generate about 680 transfer of development rights. Now, again, this is ballpark estimate. It's not going to be more than 1,064. We know that, but it, is probably somewhere in the range of 600 to 700. So then we get into the question of the conservation restrictions themselves. Obviously, we don't want to give full credit for wetlands and wetland buffers because they're not really developable for residential purposes. But if, for instance, you have a 1 acre zoning requirement, you can probably get, 20% of that on your parcel. You can have some wetlands associated on your parcel. Also, when you're planning for conservation restrictions, you really want to have contiguous lands under a conservation restriction. So the town would probably be interested in receiving a block of land under restriction. In this case, maybe it would be a 40-acre parcel, maybe only 30 acres of which, or 28 acres of which, are upland, and the rest is wetland and wetland buffer. But it makes sense for that to be a contiguous conservation restriction. The owner of the land in the sending area is not just going to give that land away for free or give the development rights away for free. So we thought that perhaps there should be some ratio by which they could get some credit for those lands And for purposes of discussion tonight, we simply proposed 1/5. So if, again, using the 70% assumption above, if 30% was wetlands of that 1,064, that would be about 319 acres. That would be roughly another 50 to 60 development rights. So, looking at this, you may be on the order of 725 development rights or so. So that's just the 61 and 61A lands. The other thing we had talked about was the possibility of expanding that to include other lands. When we were developing this PowerPoint, we thought, well, we had talked about the water resource protection districts and aquifer protection districts. Those are very, very large areas. If you wanted to expand it now to include those, or if you want to expand it in the future to include those, that would also generate a lot of transferable development rights. The other thing that we thought of just today as we were going through the assessor's maps again and looking at it compared to the map that Josh showed earlier of the Chapter 61 and 61A lands, there's farmland in town that is not under Chapter 61A, but that is good quality farmland that is actively farmed. I'm thinking, for instance, as an example, the land that is on the right and left side of the entrance road to the Neshoba tubing park. The frontage along the Great Road is agricultural land that is used for agriculture, but is not under 61A. So you might want to expand to include actively farmed lands that are good quality soils that are not under 61A. Marion, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so in the receiving area, if you remember, again, the zoning map that Josh showed that had those two blue arrows pointing to the area east of 495, west of Foster Street, and the area down near the intersection of 2 and 495, all of which is the Industrial A zoning district. We had a quick look at that, and if we just looked at the vacant lands within that area, there's approximately 88 acres. Now, this is not to say that some of the existing offices or some of the existing warehouse space that's down there might not convert over to a mixed use, but we thought initially, those are occupied, and if they're viable, let's just assume that they're going to stay, and we'll make the assumption that the vacant lands would be the lands that would be likely developed first under this. At a density of 10 units per acre on those 88 acres, and again, if we assume about 80% uplands and 20% wetlands, then you could perhaps absorb maybe 700 transferable development units. In theory, you could also just say it's 10 units per acre for all land within the district and leave it to the developer to be imaginative as to how they may be able to squeeze additional units into an area of smaller piece of upland. But we thought that there may be some difficulty with having sufficient amount of parking. So that's why we did carve it back a little bit down to the 700. So then the question became, if additional land to the north of Industrial A, again on the west side of Foster Street, this would be part of the nursing home parcel that is part of your Littleton train station village study. This study indicated that perhaps some of that land could be added to the village area. That may be in as much as 20 or 30 acres. And again, so you could perhaps have as many as 200 or 300 development units in there. But the bottom line is that the 700 units, if you assume 700 units in the train station receiving area, that translates to about 750 acres of farm and forest land being preserved elsewhere in town. So that's the big question. Is this an acceptable trade-off for the municipality? Do folks feel, yeah, the train station is a great spot, let's let it grow, and let's let it grow in a manner that will preserve other areas? I would argue if you're going to let the train station area grow, you should get something for it. You should get the development rights purchased from the other areas. Maren, if you could go to the next slide, please. So now we have 2 slides of questions, and we probably are not going to get through answering all of these tonight. What I'd like to do is go through them, get you to understand them, and then we can go back and talk about as many as we can, as many as we have time for, and we will probably have to talk to you again about them. So one of the questions, density of 10 units an acre, we think is sufficient based upon our modeling. However, until last Saturday, Littleton Common was about 10 units per acre under the mixed use zoning that was allowed there. And that zoning has been in place for close to 10 years, if I remember. And I don't think you got any development proposed in that area. So it could be that, when Josh said it looks like it's viable, but, just kind of on the edge of being viable, 10 units an acre may not be enough. And so the question is, would you and would the municipality feel comfortable with more than 10 units an acre? When you just change the zoning in Littleton Common under the form-based code, based on the build-out analysis that we've done of the new form-based code, you're on the order of 15 to 17 units an acre, depending upon whether they take advantage of all of the parking reductions. So that's the order of magnitude. The other thing to keep in mind is Littleton Common is going to be a competitor for the train station area. If I, as a developer, want to come into Littleton and build something, if I can build 15 units an acre in the downtown, but only 10 units an acre down by the train station, and by the way, when I'm working at the train station, I've got to buy the development rights from elsewhere, I might not be as interested in that. I might focus more on the Littleton Common area. The third question, our model, as Josh said, shows that the development becomes more financially viable for a developer once you get closer to the 15 units an acre. There seems to be the ability to either increase the ratio some, perhaps 1.5 units of transfer from the sending area to 1 unit within the receiving area. On the other hand, if you really want to see this succeed, you may want to just say, if we leave it at 1-to-1, that provides more flexibility for the developer to negotiate with the farmer. They may have to negotiate to $15,000 or $16,000 per acre in order to get those development rights. We're not involved with that. That's a market-driven process. And as we were looking at recent agricultural preservation restrictions purchased by the state within the last 5 years or so, the average is somewhere on the order of $15,000 per acre. So it may be that the developer may need to spend more money buying the development rights, and therefore leaving it at a 1-to-1 ratio would be beneficial, because then you'd be jump-starting the program. The fourth bullet here really talks about the question of, if you are doing the cash in lieu of The assessed value, the difference in the assessed value for the 61A versus the unrestricted of $11,000 per acre. Again, that may be slightly low. What that would mean is, using the example of the 30 units per acre, the town gets about $350,000. When you actually go to buy things, you may not be able to buy 30 development rights. You may be able to buy 27, or you may be able to buy 25 because it's right on a road. It's a really developable piece of land, but the town really wants it. You may not wind up with the exact amount, but it's something that will certainly underwrite the town's ability to go ahead and purchase those development rights, because you won't have to be doing it solely based on your tax dollars. You'll be able to do it with the help of this TDR fund. Marion, if you go to the next slide, please. So here, yes, we're talking about this cash in lieu of, should that be a little bit higher? A, to provide money for the town to purchase development rights, and also, do you want to provide more of an incentive for the developer to work directly with the farmers? Leave the town out of it. If you were to increase this ratio and say that instead of 30 TDRs for the example, if it was 1.5, they'd have to provide the equivalent of 45 TDRs worth of value to the town. That might be an incentive for a developer to work a little bit harder to do this through a private transaction. And it would leave the town out of it and make life a little bit easier for the town. The next question relates to the question of buffers and wetlands and how you want to value them. We proposed a 1/5 value so that we get manageable contiguous blocks of conservation restrictions, but we needed to talk with you about whether that was reasonable. Next, should the aquifer and water resource districts be added as sending areas? Or do you want to start with just the chapter lands, and then once you preserve those, maybe add in the water resource lands later? And then the next two basically are just to say, as part of this, the survey is live. We've got to take into account the information that we receive from the survey about what folks think about density, where they think they'd like to see the receiving areas, what they would like to see as the areas that are preserved. What are their thoughts on whether water resource areas are as important as agricultural land? So we hope to hear a little bit more about that as the survey is completed by folks. And as of right now, Josh checked this morning, there was 65 folks who had participated in the survey. We hope to get that a lot higher, but 65 is a good start. When we checked early in the week, there was only about a dozen. So I think that somehow maybe folks heard about it at town meeting and they're starting to pay attention. And then the next step is we'll be working on drafting the bylaw. So I know you only had 40 minutes, and so we started at 6:05. We've got 1 minute left on our allocation.
We actually have 6 minutes left, but
Okay,
we'll work with it. So Mark and Josh, thank you very much for the presentation and bringing us up to speed. Jerry, members, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to need to go through sort of the points that we're going to really need to care about, especially as we look at impact and what the upper limits are on the current zoning proposals, especially with like the potential receiving areas, like the common, maybe Sam Park's location and the train station area. If you remember, these are development rights on top of what's already possible. So for instance, if the common area can hold 15 units per acre, and you're going to use transfer development rights there, you're going to have to give that developer more than the 15 he's already getting. right? So that would apply anywhere you want to drop this density. So there has to be room. There has to be space for the developer to add to his property. And I don't think we always have to assume that they're buying additional land. It could be that, you have the acreage that you have, and it's just how much can I up my density on that acreage without buying additional land. So that's where we have to be careful about how the bylaw is written. I think there's some precedent out there for TDR, but we have to find something. And what I recommend is do something simple and understandable first, and then iterate on it. So we have to leave some room for that. Because I don't even know what's, I don't know how you would get this off the ground initially if it got too complicated to administer, or even really for that matter to understand. And just the last point I wanted to make is the ratio itself goes in the bylaw. So it's very important to understand that ratio it doesn't move. It stays in the bylaw. So periodically we have to think about how we treat that ratio. Does it stay for the board? Like, does it stay static? Do we need to revisit it every year? Should it be revisited on market events? Like these are things that we need to think about as we talk about this.
Yeah, I guess I looked at this as the simplistic approach to it. Let's talk about the piece that Mark was talking about, the farmland that's up at the tubing park. So let's just say there's 10 acres there, and somebody wants to do an open space project and has 20 lots. They've been allowed 20 lots. I thought the way we were looking at this was, if there's 10 acres there, there's 10 houses that could be built there. They pay the $12,000 a lot, and they build those 10 lots somewhere else.
No, not at all. Because you're doing this almost like a pro rata basis. You're making a calculation based on the assumptions of the 1,064 acres combined. So you take an average across that, and you're calculating out what the profitability is spread across that. And then what can you translate that to in a receiving area? It doesn't matter that you have 40 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres. It just matters the ratio. So if you have 10 acres, you can see it basically equates to 15 acres for a developer. That's 15 units for a developer. That's what the offset.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a 1-to-1 ratio. If you have 10 acres and you build 10 single-family houses,
you get 10 units.
10.
That's the other thing. 10 units. So 10 units could mean, I can have 10 more apartments in my apartment building, or 10 more attached condos.
We don't. Right now, that land. Let's talk about the tubing park. The tubing park is zoned residential. He can build 10 houses. Let's say it's 10 acres. He can build 10 houses there. So if he wants to preserve it and sell the development rights, he's selling 10 house lots. And if you're paying $12,000 a house lot, he gets to keep the land, won't be developed, sells those 10 lots to some guy doing a plan, as a subdivision down there. He's going to build 20. Now he's going to build 30. That's the easy, simple 1-to-1 approach.
That's the 1-to-1, and it's purely negotiable. And technically, the town's not. I mean, you don't even really need much of a bylaw for that at all. That would just be like,
I thought that's where
selling you the rights.
If we were going to get our feet wet, we're going to start something easy like that. Before we
these are good questions, Mark, and I'm not disputing anything you're saying. I'm saying these are all the things that we have to talk about, because if these guys are going to draft the bylaw, we have to decide: are we including ratio? Are we simply writing something up that is saying, hey, we're doing a 1-to-1. It's buyer versus seller. There's no middleman, and the only thing the town does is recognize that TDRs were sold and make sure that the seller's got a CR restriction on his property. That's it.
Before we start getting into 10%, 10 times the density and 15 times the density, I think we should start at 1-to-1 and see how that goes. If we're trying to preserve open space and farmland, and we're doing open space everywhere else, if we gave them a higher density and they could buy the 10 lots that they could build on that piece of property, then the owner still gets to keep it in perpetuity, sold the 10 acres of developing there before we get into, oh, you could build 100 apartments there. Well, first of all, we don't have zoning there for 100.
That's not what the description is trying to say. And this is the part we were talking about. Like to gain adoption on this, is this really complicated? Too complicated to explain.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem
Ratio
going
itself has nothing to do with whether you can build apartments on the sending area. It's just a ratio to help the developer obtain a profit based on what he's going to have to do to build those development units. You want a developer to buy those. In order for this to work, you need the developer to want to buy them, right? He's got to know that he can make a profit off it.
My point
The seller is simply saying, hey, I have a farm. I could build on my farm. I don't want to build on my farm, but I need some cash. So this is a way for him to monetize his asset, never has to put up a stick on his property, and he sells them off to a developer. But the developer needs an incentive to do that so he can go do that in a downtown urbanized area and make a profit. That's what you're doing.
I'm losing you on the downtown urbanized. Littleton is still single family or we're slowly getting into multi.
It's not, Mark. I mean, that's what this whole thing's all about. You cannot have form-based code and talk about developing the train station and all the type of mixed use we're talking about and say we're doing single family homes.
Well, right now, that's all we're building right now. That's all people are building right now.
That's all we're zoned to build right now.
Exactly. That's all we're zoned to build. So if you're going to want to start transferring development rights, you might have to up the ratio, maybe give them 2 or 3 to 1 on single family homes. 10 acres.
The trade-off though, Mark, is you say, listen, I'm not going to have 1,000 homes spread out across 700 acres. I'm going to have 1,000 homes jammed on 30 acres or 80 acres. And that's what that's what you're talking about. In return for that, your farm is preserved in perpetuity. That's the trade-off. Implicit in the whole conversation.
Jerry and Mark, may we hear from some of our other planning board members?
I'm good.
Thank you. Okay.
Mark, what you were proposing, I'm like uncomfortable with, especially at those values, because it seems to me that it'd be worth a lot more to a developer to buy these TDRs to build extra houses on existing land. But we're also assuming that we have a defined receiving area, and we need to look at those receiving areas and think about the vision. You know, we had this planning report about the train station, and this seems like it has to work together. What I don't remember hearing about before was the aquifer protection, which is interesting to me. But I'd like to see a graphic about what those lands are. I mean, there could be unintended consequences. But right now the water department buys land to protect aquifer. And if we could reduce that cost somehow or boost it up somehow through this, it'd be worth looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's going to be a big problem for the town going forward. So.
Oh, you're muted, Elisa.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Hey, behave.
No, I agree with Jeff. I also, I really want to see what the survey results look like, and I also agree with keeping it simple. It makes me a little nervous putting ratios in bylaws because market values change so much. And we all know how difficult it is to get a bylaw change. So, and I don't know what the solution is to that.
So Delisa, you just totally proved my point earlier. This is a complicated thing to understand. Mm-hmm. And your comment about you don't know the valuation, right? The valuation between the buyer and the seller has nothing to do with the ratio. They're decoupled.
Right. Okay.
If I come to buy your rights and you're going to sell them to me for $20,000 per unit, then that's what you're selling to me for. But the ratio allows me to simply increase the number of units I can have. So if you sell me 10, right, I get to build 15, regardless of what price you sell them to me at.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. That's a key point, and that you have to get people to understand that.
But if they become a cash payment, then it's important. Because the town which seems like to me that's the easiest way to do this, because we could end up, receiving.
So Jeff, that sounds awesome, but this is where if I put on my finance hat, right, and I'm the town, why would I take the risk?
Mm-hmm.
You're asking me to take the financial risk and bear that burden at no benefit to the town at all.
So
right?
The risk is that we have money in an account that has no place to go.
The risk is you took in money, right? You bought units for which you are not in possession of. You basically have an option to buy. You have a $300,000 option to buy units that don't exist. If units become available, you could then take that money and buy those units. But now market prices could go for or against you. You could win, but you could lose big, right? So to Mark's earlier point, he said, well, if 30 become available, you may only be able to buy 27. That's the risk you're asking the town to take on. Worst case scenario is you do a bunch of cash TDR transactions. You're sitting on a bunch of money. First off, you got to make sure that money's properly segregated and not spent elsewhere. The other thing is when you do go to buy, what's the valuation? Because now sellers know the town's sitting on a bunch of TDR money. You may be creating a false market, and you may be driving up the price to buy. This is all the municipal risk that towns take on all the time, and kind of get burned on. Like if I was a financial advisor to the town, which I'm not, I would say, why, if you're going to take on risk like that, you need to be compensated for it.
So with that,
I don't know how you would do
because
that.
I do think we do need more discussion on this, obviously, and being able to get the survey information, as well as now that we've heard more from our consultants, to be able to talk about this among other folks in town. And may I make a suggestion? When we started form-based code last year, it was sort of vetted by a lot of the other boards and commissions in town. So I would highly recommend that Jerry, you and the consultants consider how to get this in front of the Board of Selectmen, how to get it in front of Conscom, in front of the working group for the train station, so that anybody else that really has a pertinent stakeholder seat here is informed about this before we go into drafting the bylaw. And the only reason why I say that is because this way, Mark and Josh have as much input as feasible before starting to draft that bylaw. And then that bylaw will be able to be iterated as well. So that's my 2 cents. I also wanted to make sure that if there were any members of the public who had any comment or questions, that we get to those before we move on.
Doug Peak.
Okay, can we hear from Mr. Peak?
Howdy, Doug Peak, 65 Grimes Lane. I am an owner of one of the 61A properties. And so I have a few comments. Before I talk about the property, I'd just like to note that if you're going to compare the common area to the railroad station, you have to keep in mind that we have a common sewer system coming to the common area, and maybe people are waiting for that before they put in high density, so they don't have to worry about putting in a septic system on the property itself. Now, as far as a property owner goes, I'll look at all options if I need money. And one of them I'm aware of is that if I go to conservation restriction, I can get tax deductions. And so if you're going to look at this TDR, you also have to look at the competitive other ways I have to do with my property. The other option I have is to do what the Durkees did. You take it out of 61A, you wait so many years, and you sell it at full value. and they got a lot of money doing that, and you cannot compete with that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. And then we have
Amy Green.
Amy Green. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Amy Green. I'm the conservation coordinator in town, but I am actually not speaking on behalf of the commission at this point. But in general, I'd say it's a fantastic concept. I would reiterate a little bit of what Doug just said, is that it seems to me that land with a 61 or 61A on it has more value than land with a CR on it, because a CR you can't get rid of. A 61 or 61A, you can wait it out or pay the rollback the taxes on it. So there might be a little bit of discrepancy in there. And the other thing I would think should be factored into the CR piece of it is that there's a lot of efforts and expense in setting up the CR as well as monitoring it every year. So I think that's a burden that just needs to be considered in terms of both staff and cost. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are all-
Great. So, so in terms of next steps, what's the recommendation?
Well, I thought you said you wanted to get this in front of the various boards, get their feedback. Maybe we should craft a letter and put a package together to submit to each of the boards, and then you want a comment period? Like, how long do you want to wait?
I think that would be a great idea, Jerry, because we have this video that folks could actually watch at their discretion and be able to see some of the questions and responses from Mark and Josh. So that's a great idea. Maren, what's typically a good way to communicate with the other boards and committees if we're not going to be getting in front of them, so to speak?
Well, actually, Jerry had a very good idea of reaching out with the package for all of them. So that makes sense.
And what kind of wait period is it to hear back from them? Would it be like 30 to 45 days or less than that?
At least 30 days to allow meetings to happen and in that time frame.
What's
Okay.
the schedule for compiling the survey results?
Should
Well,
be.
we wanted to make sure that the survey was out while you had town meetings so that folks could be made aware of it. And that does seem to have been successful. I think that we can, leave it open as long as you guys think it's appropriate to leave open. Be good to close it, maybe by early to mid-July. But if you think it should go longer than that, we could certainly do that. But I think, the sooner we can get the feedback, both on the survey and from the boards, then we would have more to work with when we're discussing with you guys.
I'm just thinking that the boards might be interested in the results of the survey.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to have the results before we go to the,
What kind of survey is that? Is that Survey Monkey?
Josh, I believe you did this on Qualtrics, correct?
I mean,
Yeah.
that should have running stats on your thing right now. I mean, you shouldn't even have to do anything. Just print the report, and send it over.
Yeah, we can do an interim output. You're right, Jerry. That's not really a big issue. I mean, relative to like scientific survey results, I'm not sure how we feel about it influencing the remaining ability to vote and adjust those outcomes, but we could certainly do an interim result package.
I think we're just looking for sentiment analysis, right? I mean, we just like what's the sentiment on this, and is there any red flags out there, any strong sentiment one way or the other, like that kind of thing.
but I think before we do that, let's give it another couple weeks. Like, I know I haven't promoted it on any of the, like Anna, the Littleton Women's Discussing. I haven't put it on there yet.
So maybe leave it on through the 3rd of July or the 10th of July.
Well, wait, what are we targeting then? Are we targeting
The survey.
No, are we targeting getting a package out to the selectmen for August? Like the boards that meet in August, because they'll be meeting like us right now, and then they won't meet again until July, right?
They meet twice a month, so if we could target to have a package to them by their last meeting in July, would that make sense?
So then you want to target closing the survey by like the last week of July as well.
As long as you can make sure to have the data for it available, that would be fine.
What? Yeah, I mean, it comes with the software. It's just a matter of like, do you want the analysis or you just want the output?
Well, why don't we close it like July 10th? What is that? Is that too, I mean, we do want to create some sense of urgency here. I don't want to string it out. So maybe we close it July 1st.
That's only a week from now.
That's a week away.
I have no sense of time anymore. Well, what do you
Yeah,
want?
so
What do you
July
recommend?
10th
How about
gives
don't
us 2
close
more
it?
weeks.
Wait, just get the stats out of it and leave it open.
That's
Don't close it.
and just leave it there, and people can continuous.
All right, how about we do this?
That's an interesting approach, I think. And just at, a week before we make the packages for the other boards, we say, this is the result of the survey so far.
Yeah,
I would,
that
the
sounds-
marketer and me would suggest that we create some sense of urgency. We set a date so that way we can tell people, look, if you care about this, you need to get your answers in by such and such a date. Just my.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, put a stake in the ground. But what are we
July 10th.
targeting October? Is that what you're targeting for TDR? When are you bringing this to the floor? Town vote.
Oh, not till spring of town meeting, right? You're not going to be ready for October.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Because if you want to accelerate this, what are you accelerating to? You're gonna draft a bylaw and sit on it? Like, what are we gonna do?
Well,
Is
and
that-
don't we want it to be in conjunction with Littleton Station?
When is that
can we
going?
Play together, and can we get both ready by October?
We're nowhere near Littleton
Yeah.
Station.
Right,
Well,
so,
Lauren said no.
yeah, so Lauren, I mean, do you
I
guys?
don't know that you need to go with the state. You could go without the station
You're right.
and let the station go next. I don't think you want to go with the station and not have TDR.
You can't get either one of these ready by fall town meeting.
Why not? Well, maybe not.
Lauren, you don't
Oh,
think
but why not?
Town meeting, annual town meeting.
The question that I would have is, when does the warrant close? And would you have adequate time to have enough meetings and enough discussion on it so that you're completely comfortable with the bylaw language before the time the warrant closes?
Right, and to me, given the uncertainty in what fall town meeting might look like this year, may look like the spring town meeting did. We
Yeah,
would
probably.
be doing great to get it all wrapped up in a package for spring.
Well, when does the warrant close? September?
Mhm.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
3 months.
It's too fast. Spring town meeting, when you're going to have hopefully more people involved, more people looking at it.
yeah, I would suggest we keep plowing forward as best we can.
Yeah, so
Um,
if we got till
it's
spring, then
difficult.
there's no rush.
I'm not aware of any pressing
Yeah.
impending giant development proposals that are going to relate to this. I mean,
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but
Well, I guess from that standpoint, then if there is no inherent time pressure, then we have the ability to take the summer to really get it well vetted across the town and begin to then create the draft, unless there's some timing issue on the grant, Maren, that we need to be aware of.
Mhm.
No, okay.
But
All right.
let's not lose, the kind of the momentum we have, because I think a lot
I
of
agree.
times we're like, oh, there's no rush, and then all of a sudden, spring. So-
Can I make a request then? Can Ms. Laterzo and Mr. Portante get together and create a draft of a timeline, if you will, just so that we can stay on top of it? Because you two are the heads of your respective projects, if you will, and if you can let us know.
For what? For Littleton Station?
Yeah, for Littleton Station and for TDR and how they kind of come together. I mean, that way we have your input. Again, rough timeline to get this to spring town meeting next year.
Yeah, I mean, I can do it with Littleton Station. I mean, we first have to, Littleton Station, we've got to sit down as a group, which Mark Montanari, I've yet to hear from you on when you are available for a meeting.
Anytime you want me, I'm available.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay. So what I hear is we'll go ahead and survey closes July 10th. We'll get a packet together for some of the other boards. And if Jerry and Elisa can provide the board back with some rough dates over the next year or how to move these two things together, that would be good.
How much of a draft do you have of the bylaw, Mark?
Well, I put together some thoughts based upon a couple of the bylaws that are around the state, but I would say as far as concept, probably 50%, but as far as writing, maybe only 30%. So there's some work to go here, especially because we need to have the feedback from the survey and from the boards, because that's going to steer how the bylaw goes. For instance, you may choose to not have a cash in lieu of program at all, and that just gets wiped out. That's easy. But we need that kind of information in order to move the bylaw forward.
Martin, you're probably gonna have to draft some type of cover letter, right? Like what the asks are from this board to their boards. Like, here's the 10 questions we want you guys to weigh in on. You know, here's the important pieces, like that kind of thing. When we send it out with their package. So
Yeah,
I would definitely work with Martin and just like, here's the 10 things you absolutely need to know to draft this bylaw, and then, you know, give a little color on each one why, and then once we get that feedback, depending on what the analysis is, we could figure out like what next steps are for sort of tuning that bylaw.
It seems like you have that. Yeah, I mean, the presentation the slides you gave us, you know, at the beginning of the meeting outlined the questions, and the variables, and, you know, so.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it. Yeah, because I already have it. So all you gotta do is just put it in a letter and shoot it up.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So I think we're good to go. Thank you again, Mark, Josh, for being here.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. We'll be in touch with Maren and with Jerry.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
All right.
So I have a notice that Jennifer Platt from Weber Village wanted to briefly bring us up to speed on something. And so she has another meeting to go to. So perhaps we can hear what she has to say for about 10 minutes, and then we can continue that discussion at a future meeting. Hello, Ms. Platt. How are you?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for moving me up the agenda. I appreciate that. It's a busy Zoom night.
It is.
So Weber Village is coming along. We were in front of this board a year ago for the special permit approval. It's a development that has 17 units. It's a mix of cottages and duplexes. As you recall, we have a 10% affordability requirement with all sorts of amenities in here, including a gazebo and gardens and walking trails. And if you've had a chance to come by, this project is up and the units are getting completed, and it looks fantastic. We're very excited about this. One thing that this board required in our special permit was of our 10% affordable units, which it comes down to 2 units when you round up, is there be 1 cottage and 1 duplex, and that we show that on a plan. And so the plan that we actually presented to the board and was endorsed, unfortunately had 2 cottages rather than a duplex and a cottage. And through the building and the marketing process, we have identified 2 units to be affordable. So one is a cottage as requested, and one is a duplex as requested. These all are identical on the outside when you come into the village and look at them. They are all have the same construction materials, the same look, the same design to them. We have one of the duplexes right when you come in, and then we put one of the cottages, which is right in the center of the development. This is, it's a minor modification of the plan, both to show where these units are. And the other change is when the assessor assigned street addresses for each of these units, they assigned a street address for each, and they don't mesh with the original numbers that we had on the plan. So we've changed the unit numbers on the plan to match the street addresses, because we found through experience on our last project, having different unit numbers and different street addresses caused a lot of confusion with the buyers and the owners going into this project. So we thought this would make life a lot easier, both for the assessor, for us, and for the unit owners. So what we have before you, and maybe Maren, I don't know if you would be so kind as to put up for the board, we'd submitted this earlier, the revised layout plan, which shows where those two units are. Otherwise, everything is identical to the plan you approved. The number of units, the structure of the units, the trails, the amenities. You can see the two hashed or grayed units, one right when you come in, that's unit 39, and one right in the middle, that's unit 36, which we are identifying as affordable units. So our request is simply to have the board approve this minor modification so we can put that on record, and then it's clear to all the prospective buyers which unit they're getting and which ones are the affordable units.
So Ms. Platt, what were the two previously on the September plan?
So it was previously number 29, which would have been the far left, and I believe it was 38, which was on the far right of the center.
So these are supposed to be dispersed throughout. I think that's something for our members to consider is, these are almost across the street from each other.
They are, but this is a tiny development. We have 17 units. We only have 4 acres here. You can only get them so far apart. We have, as you see, sort of 4 rows of homes, and we have them in 2 separate rows. And that allows one to be right in the center and then one to be on the outside on the perimeter. We don't have there aren't a ton of options here.
Well, I know that you have to run, so you mentioned that there was some additional information that came in so that we can actually do a good comparison.
No, that's all the materials were submitted last week. And so you have all those. We don't have anything above and beyond, other than town council asked us to provide draft language for a decision, which we did, and he approved. So we would love to get your approval on this. And if you have any questions, happy to chat about that. But I just, I'll say in the original decision, there's no requirement as to location of the units, only that we have 1 cottage and 1 duplex. So we are making sure that that is provided.
So the additional information that I'm referencing was an email sent by Mr. Field this afternoon.
And I'm looking here. I believe that was simply showing what the layouts of cottages and duplexes look like. Is that a floor plan? So those are, all the duplexes have the same layout. All the cottages have the same layout. The duplexes actually are a little bit larger in terms of square footage. I believe about 200 square feet larger than the cottages. So whereas before it was 2 cottages, now with one being a duplex, that's actually a larger unit than was originally designated.
Okay.
And I mean, we have people who are anxious and waiting to close on these units. We have someone who'd like to move in as soon as we can, and we've put that off because we wanted to be in front of this board to make sure that the plan that goes on record is accurate and shows which are affordable units. So we've delayed closings. We have people who are going to be in need of a home as of the end of this week. So we'd very much like to have your have you
You're
vote
telling
on
me
this and
somebody's going to
approve
be
it.
moving in at the end of the week if we don't make a decision?
They would like to move on in at the end of this week. So we would like to get this plan approved to show where they're allowed to move.
I didn't think that it was ready for that. I mean,
They are. This is a phased condo. So the first 3 units are constructed and we're waiting for a C of O, which we expect momentarily.
I thought other things still had to be done, in terms of getting the curbs in, the granite curbing and that there were still things that I didn't know that people were getting ready to actually start occupying.
Oh, absolutely. It's ready to go. And if you recall from the special permit, we have stages where certain things need to be done before the first building permit was issued, and certain things that need to be done before the first occupancy permit is issued, and certain things that need to be done before a certain percentage of units are done. But in terms of the first occupancy, we're ready to go. And actually we're way ahead. For example, some of the amenities, the tennis court doesn't need to be done until the last unit is sold, and that's already being prepped now. The gazebo I saw was, and a fire pit was going in earlier this week or last week. The garden beds are already being prepped, and those are things which we're not obligated to deliver until later in the project life. But we're getting those out and done early on because I think that they look great. And had an opportunity to do a video tour of the project last week, and it is. Maren was on that as well and got to see it. It's looking good.
Do we have a bond on this project?
No, as a private one, we don't.
By the way,
We have no bond.
No. No bond.
you
Other
do have the
members?
ability to
Any
hold
questions?
up building permits if we haven't met our milestones, and we've been meeting those milestones.
Members, any other questions, comments?
Well, I'm not even sure why they need to be in front of us. It's not really a site plan change. They just want to redesignate what's affordable versus not affordable. So, to me,
Well,
it's
in order
thing.
in order to close, right now the record plans show affordable unit as one that they have the purchase and sale on, as the market rate unit. So something needs to be recorded, would need to be recorded to allow that to sell as a market rate unit.
No, I agree with you, which is what was my concern when they first talked about it. So, but now, there's nothing really in our bylaw that calls out you need to come in front of us for a site plan.
To modify a special permit. Yes, yeah, this is
Well, for a substantial change, I think the bylaw reads,
Yeah.
for any substantial change, we need to be in front of you. This is about as minor as it gets. It's a
Yeah, I don't see the issue.
I have no problem with changing the affordable units. And I was there about 3 or 4 weeks, and they were, finishing off probably the one you're, going to be closing on. So they've gone quite a bit. And it's not uncommon to have a phased rollout of amenity and finish and, different levels of completion. So I don't have any problem with this.
Ms. Laterzo?
Bond, I don't have a problem with the fact that it's not bonded, so it's not
Are
much.
you Miss Laterzo? I don't think so.
She is.
No, if nobody else has a problem, then
Well, I would just like to reiterate that I see them as being too close together. They're virtually across the street from each other.
But it's not materially different than the what the other one, the previous one was across the street on just the other side.
Mhm.
It might be 30 feet or 20 feet further away. I don't think that's significant.
Okay. So is the number of You said that this one would be larger.
Correct. The square footage of the duplexes is larger than the standalone cottages. It's about 200 square feet bigger. So by someone getting a affordable duplex, they're getting the largest units that we have on site.
Okay.
And as Jeff said, the original location, they were in the same rows, but they were each a cottage rather than a duplex.
And then, and it's the same number of bedrooms each?
That's correct. These are each limited to 2 bedrooms.
Lauren, in terms of the gating system, if you will, for this to be able to proceed with the purchase and sale, everything is up to where it needs to be? Everything's been done?
Yeah, yep.
Is there a cost difference we're talking about between a duplex and a standalone?
Yep, on their website, for the market rate units, they have the cottage units, I believe, at $525 and the duplex unit at $515, if I read that correctly.
Not a substantial difference in price. $10,000, not a lot. I don't have a problem with this.
And I think it's appropriate to have one of each type of unit offered. And that sounds reasonable to me.
And I'm going to interrupt for a second. Michael Field has his hand up.
All right.
Just a moment.
Mr. Field?
Hi. Oh,
Guessing that might be Janet Field.
sorry. I wanted to see if I could show you guys just a quick update of the project. Like, I know Jennifer has to go, but this would be like a 2-minute or not even 30-second overview. If
Go ahead.
that you don't need to. Oh, I see Jerry's face. I'm Mr. Portante. you know what? I can just email it for people to look at. Would that be better?
Yeah.
Well, if we have something that you'd like them to see, I think we'd like to do it now because my request would be for them to close this and have a vote to approve it. So I don't want this to go to burden them at another meeting.
Pushy, aren't you?
Are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Go ahead
here.
for whatever you want to say or do.
Am I
So
sharing my screen?
Yeah,
Okay.
Have that in.
needs to let you do it. Yeah.
we are not seeing anything yet.
Not yet.
You are muted. I'm muted. I'm unmuted.
It
Lauren,
took a
do you
moment
need
to get.
do you need to authorize her? There you go. There you are. We see you now.
Okay. I don't know. Did anyone have a chance to see this quick video overview?
Did not see a quick video overview.
You're not sharing.
Oh, come on.
We like the music though.
You can't see it?
Music,
No.
yeah.
Got nothing.
Oh, Lord. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not usually so.
Now you're starting.
Now we're
Yeah,
There
seeing.
you go.
All right. So these are just the current pictures from, most of them from this week. So that's the unit that's ready to go that Miss Houston had asked, how could it be ready? So here we go. There's the unit ready. That one that's being cited right now is the second affordable unit. That's the gazebo and like a little community gathering spot that just finished up this week, or is in the process of being finished up. Some work that's done at the entrance, some trees that were planted. That's the start of the,
Walking trail.
thank you, the walking trail. Just a little perspective going down the road. So the, this is the first row where those two houses would be located or are located. They're both.
Can you show with your cursor which are the affordable units?
This one here, and then you actually can't see the second one. I'm sorry,
Do the overview.
but in 1 second.
Yeah, we're
you're
not
gonna
seeing
see-
anything.
Yeah, you're going to see the overview. So
There we
it'll
go.
be this unit here. Can you see my,
Yes,
and then this unit here.
the one that's not yet cited.
As of this photograph, although as of today, it is.
Yep.
Okay, that's great.
And
So
then
we can get those. because our decision requirements don't require that second affordable unit to come on for quite some time. Are we going to be able to get that out sooner?
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to finish the affordables up as soon as possible, but we are working with a company about the marketing and lottery program. So we'll.
That's fantastic. We want to get those out as and
More
available
stays in the
as soon as
loop on what's
possible.
going on. Sorry. This area right here is where the tennis courts are, just as an overview. So that's it as of today.
All right. Well, you're right. You
It's
can't
right
see
out
that
my
one
window.
finished unit from the road.
Yeah. Good. That's good for the future, right? You have some privacy back there.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking the time to look.
So members, what do you think? This is a
Yeah,
good motion.
Go. Good to go.
I move to close the hearing.
There's no hearing.
Oh, but don't we have to make a motion?
Meeting.
Yeah, I
You
think
would
you have,
need
did you say
vote.
you drafted a decision? Do we have to read that?
Yep.
Okay, a motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's all read.
What this screen says.
Okay, would you like me to read it?
Sure, Maureen, go ahead.
A motion is made to approve the minor modification of the Weber Village Special Permit Plan recorded as Plan 758 of 2019 to substitute sheet 2.0 of the plan with the sheet entitled Layout Plan 80 King Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, sheet number C 2.0, revised June 10, 2020, prepared by Ducharme and Dillis. Oops, Dillis. The revised layout plan is the same as approved by the planning board, other than the location of the affordable units and the unit numbers themselves, which now match the street addresses assigned by the town of Littleton. As required by the planning board special permit dated April 25, 2019, one affordable unit is a cottage unit and one affordable unit is a duplex unit.
I'll make a motion with as read.
Anyone second?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion, first and second. And so we can go ahead and vote. Let's start with Ms. Laterzo.
Aye. Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Ms. Houston, yes. All right.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so that came a little bit out of order. And so if we do board business last, we can go to Cooper Farm Estates next. We have two different topics there, since we have Ms. Field on the line.
Yeah.
Yep, we had the bond reduction request, and as late as just about half an hour ago, Green provided their final review of the numbers, and they're okay with the reduction to $36,000 plus an amount to remove the silt fence. I'm guessing that might not be more than a couple $1,000s. Is that a fair estimate?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
What
So,
I'm
Bill,
sorry.
can you please provide us a quick status update on the overall development? I mean, it's been a while and we have some new board members that have probably not been a part of this discussion before.
I'm sorry, I wish I prepared some visuals, but there actually at this time is only one single family lot left to build, and we just received an offer for it. I'm not sure that it's been accepted yet, but
Wait,
so the last, oh, sorry.
you talking about Cooper Farm?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
I have to recuse myself because my mother is buying a lot. So I'm out.
All right, well, just mute
You have
yourself.
to come back.
So I'm sorry. So there's one single family lot left. And so that part of the development has progressed nicely. The road in that part is finished. Green International had a couple miscellaneous things that we need to follow up on because we'd like to get the road, or the plan is to get the road before the town for the fall meeting.
So one of the things that if you could just explain to everybody, how many final units will there be when this is done?
Michael, what's the exact number?
16 and 23.
16 and 23. So it's at 39?
39.
And
16 over 55.
Okay.
And 23.
23
Single family.
homes
Single family.
with 2 lots being turned into.
Yeah, there are 2 single family lots that we we haven't formally, but are turning over to the association.
One's getting merged with another one, and one's going to be open space.
So yeah, we've reduced a couple of lots on the single family, and the same for actually the over 55 because of that septic capacity issue. We weren't able to use them all, so we kind of redistributed the land some.
So with those things that you just mentioned, the final number will be 39.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I was just explaining why it went down to 39.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Because I know that things have changed there a couple of times. So.
Yep, it's dynamic over there.
Maren, green is fine, bond reduction. How much are we reducing the bond from?
We've never had a reduction before, so it was at 400,000, I think.
Yeah.
We just had never requested before, so this is the first reduction. I think it's bringing it down to, is it
38,000.
38,000? So maybe
Roughly.
around 40, maybe if we add a couple thousand for the removal of the silt fence.
Everything's done. We're close to acceptance by the town.
Well, we still need to go, we still need to go through the final punch list and do those items, but those are always taken care of at the road acceptance stage. The $38,000 to remain in the bond would cover any of that work.
So let's quickly go through what Green International emailed to us. I think that there are still several things that they indicate they would ask that the planning board actually wait until those things are done, or that we add money to the bond.
We did that though. Well, Maureen and I went back and forth and added it based on there. And they looked at the new things that we've added too. So maybe.
And then there are additional items, as they said, noted in correspondence, but have not been corrected. So we still have like 10 different things.
And we're still working on them. Yes.
Let Maureen explain.
All right. I mean, it's not done. We still have a couple things to do.
No, but Maureen understands that Green has reviewed them.
Okay, well then let Maureen speak.
You're correct, Anna. Green did should have gone back and told you what the progression was. The Cooper Farm submitted their bond reduction request. Green reviewed that. That's what you're referring to. And there were several changes to be made. Those changes have been made in the bond amount. Green did another back check just a little bit ago and suggested instead of reducing the bond to 36,000, if we reduce it to 38,000, then that would be sufficient to cover the work that remains.
Green's open. We have enough money to finish the road if we have to. 38, 40,000, whatever. I'm fine.
Mr. Yates, Ms. Laterza?
I'm fine. If Green is in a position to assess this, and if they've assessed it, that's fine. And until you want the road to be accepted, and that's the final backstop for the town's interests in this. So.
Yeah, I'm fine as well.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about that. Again, Maren, from the perspective of some new members, tell us a little bit about the process for having a road accepted between now and town meeting.
Yep. The final vote is at town meeting. I expect that this one should be ready for the fall town meeting. The developer has submitted electronic copies of as-built plans. Green reviews those. And then after Green approves those, the process, then the developer applies to the Board of Selectmen. Selectmen have a hearing and make a recommendation for town meeting. Some input to the Board of Selectmen's hearing needs to come from the planning board. So by the time we get to the Selectmen's public hearing, which is usually just before town meeting, the board, our goal is to get the board into the position to be able to say, yes, everything is complete.
So we have the 40,000 should be, according to what Marvin's saying, I'm just paraphrasing, the 40,000 should be enough to take care of all the outstanding issues.
So,
Meeting.
so typically what we see then is, just looking through everything right here. So the remaining bond in place will be 40,000. It's not being reduced by 40,000.
Being reduced to 40,000.
To 40,000. Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure.
And Green is okay with 40,000 should fix. If they didn't do anything else, 40,000 would be enough to finish the road if we had to get it to town meeting for acceptance. Correct, Maren?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we're covered. I think we're good.
Okay. So we're ready to move on. Do we have any public comment? For anybody who might be watching? Any? No?
So I'll make a motion that we reduce the bond down to leave 40,000 in there for what's left to be done in contingencies, and reduce the bond 360,000 or whatever I went to Littleton High School, so I can't do the math. Whatever the number is, leave 40,000.
You got it. You did it.
Close.
Successful Littleton High School. Good. Yeah.
I don't know about successful, but
Past math. All right. In a second.
I'll second.
Oh, Elisa, women first. Elisa, you got it.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. So let's vote. Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Ms. Houston. Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. We are taking care of business. So it is now 7:42. We have Turkey Farm. Do we have folks from Turkey Farm available?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Goudreau is on his way.
Good evening.
Brian, you are muted. Okay, there you go.
Brian Goudreau, Hancock Associates, representing Durkee Farm Estates and K Estates. So we're here tonight threefold. We were here before you back, I believe, in December, for much the same thing. We're looking to establish a new bond on the remainder of K Estates. So that's Douglas Road from station approximately 0+00, which is the start of the road, to the intersection of Cypress, which is approximately station 6+00. And that encompasses lots 46 through 50. Secondly, we're here to ask for a bond reduction on phase 1, 2, and 3 of Durkee Farm Estates, as well as the first 2 phases of K Estates. So in summary, what we're looking for is a bond reduction of $55,000 from what you hold today, which is $522,000, an establishment of a bond of $137,000 for the remainder of the work, and lot release for lots 46 through 50 on K Estates. One, I believe, recommendation, Maren, that Green had that came out of the comments was with respect to binder paving. Right now, the subgrade has been inspected, and we're set to pave on Monday. So I believe it's anticipation that should the board take action this evening, post binder going down, post paving early next week, we would actually be seeking the physical lot release forms. With that said, I'm happy to answer any questions, give any updates, kind of on things that, how they're going out there.
Members, questions, comments?
I'll start then. I have still two issues with out of Turkey. The disposition of the house and the 5 acres that's going into town, when are we going to get that? And the drainage system, we've been talking about it for years. I know you were cleaning out the detention pond, retention ponds. Where we're at with that before we release any more money out there.
So on two things, I don't know the exact timing on the disposition of the lot. I know it's under agreement. It's part of the decision. It will come into the town's ownership. I can check and follow up with Maren and pass that information on to the board at a future date. But it's pending. If there is a desire for that disposition to take action, sooner rather than later, I can convey that and see if the applicant, Dave and Chris, are in a position to do that. With respect to drainage, there were 2 outstanding reconstruction activities that had to occur, and they both occurred last year. So for the entirety of the fall and spring season, both infiltration basin number 2 and number 3, which are on the corner of Balsam and Fraser Street, are functioning as designed. So what we've done, they reconstructed them per the plan, and now they're functioning in 2 seasons, both the fall through the winter and then the spring that we just had. Feel free to drive by. Grass is growing, they're dry.
Maren, we should probably bring up the house with the affordable trust.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are both on to see at our next meeting, see what they want to do with the house and how soon they want to, because I'm assuming that's probably where we're going to end up giving it or giving it to them.
Mm-hmm.
I still think we have plenty of money, so I don't have a problem with doing the bond reduction now. We have a fair amount of money still.
604,000 after this.
Yeah, round numbers. We're good.
I just had a question about the numbers there. You said $137,000 in an additional bond. Okay, and what is that? Is that for the K property, or what is?
Correct. So that's the last section of the remaining roadway to be built. So bonding Douglas Street from the start to Station 600, about 600 feet of roadway, and that 600 feet of roadway services lots 46 through 50. So we're establishing a bond for that section of roadway and then asking for lot release.
Okay. And Green's weighed in. We're good with the numbers, Maren?
Yes, Green's weighed in. We're good with the numbers. There was one question from a resident about a portion of sidewalk on Durkee that they've not completed the top course on yet. Chris Finneral's aware of it. He said when they have tried to finish that work before, there's been a homeowner's vehicle parked in front of it. They haven't been able to access it. My hope would be that they remedy that as soon as possible, just by communication. But it wouldn't materially affect the amount of the bond.
Ms. Laterza, Mr. Portante, any other comments? You're muted, Jerry. You're muted.
All right, gotcha. No, I have no comments. Sorry.
Okay. So just to make sure I understand what you were saying, Mr. Goudreau, so if this bond is released, then the pavement roadway that needed to be finished that you just talked about would be done, you said, on Monday?
No, binder will go down on Douglas. The bond being held, the 467,000 of the remaining project is still in your care and custody until the remainder of the work is done. Ultimately, we will be petitioning the town for street acceptance, so the work will be completed. And if something should happen, obviously the money is there. It's the point of the bond.
Okay. And then I had a question about the lot releases. Are those the last lots to be built, or are there more after this?
No, those are the remaining lots. So 46 through 50 are the only lots as a part of K Estates that have not been released.
So, Mark, to your point about talking with the Affordable Housing Trust about the 5 acres in the house, I mean, do you have any concerns about us moving forward and releasing these lots if
No, I just think sooner rather than later, we have to have the discussion who's actually going to get it and what we're going to do with it. So, no, I have no problem with releasing the lots now for that. I just want to start the dialogue with the developer and the Affordable Trust. Let's start there and see where it goes from there.
That's cool.
So if there aren't any other questions, members, how do you want to proceed?
Well, I think we should vote to reduce the bond in the amounts that Green has suggested are adequate and add the 175 for the bonding of the last 6 lots. And
37.
we'll circle back to the Affordable Trust and get back with the developer. How's that?
I second that emotion.
All right.
You guys should
We're
let me.
singing now. All right. So based on this motion, Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Ms. Houston, yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
Just to be clear, that did you vote on the lot release as well?
Yes, the 175 for the lot release, yes.
Okay, so I'll have to bring around lot release for lots 46 through 50 for your signatures.
That can't be done through DocuSign?
That's something that gets recorded at the registry. We would also have to take a vote and record another document with your real signatures that says that you're okay with using DocuSign for recorded documents.
Why don't you just set it up and we'll have to,
Yeah.
you can meet us in the parking lot.
Yeah, and after this evening, we may have several things that need to get signed, including a plan. So that you just voted on for Weber Village.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So one more item before we get back to board business. So A&R on Upland Road.
Sherry is here for that. I will find that and share that. Just a minute.
It's a bit cold out here by the ocean. And I'm in shorts. Can we hurry up here?
Okay.
Sherry, the plan is up. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cheryl Gould, representing Mr. Cooper, who is the owner of Lot 7B, as shown on this plan, house number 11. He has a parcel of land that's extra large, and the owner of Lot 8B beside him, which is house number 14, has asked if he could buy the back acreage to expand the size of Lot 14. So this is a simple A&R. No new lots are being created. Both resulting lots satisfy all the minimum requirements of frontage and area. And I think the plan is pretty self-explanatory. Parcel A of 43,560 square feet is going to be deeded to house number 14, lot 8B.
Members, questions?
Pretty straightforward. There's still plenty of acreage on lot 11, right? It's a full frontage lot, so it's still got 40,000, right?
That's correct.
That's 1.7 acres, yeah.
1.79 acres remaining.
I don't have a problem.
Either.
Oh,
None.
Thank you.
Hold on, real quick.
Thank you very much.
Sherry,
Yes.
go, hold on just a second. So, so being the stickler that I am, so I just had a couple of quick questions, and if you can have this, finalized, that would be great. So, so Form A doesn't have the signature of Fandrick and Lee, the other homeowners, and I thought that Form A had to have the signature of all the affected landowners. So if you have them sign off on that, that would be great.
Pardon me, Madam Chair, but the the other homeowner is not affected until the conveyance is done. There is nothing impacting his lot whatsoever. So I don't think it's appropriate to have him sign off on the Form A. A lot of things could happen, including that he would not come forward with the money or something, and the parcel then won't get deeded. So none of his land is being affected. This is entirely a cutoff of land belonging to Lot 11. And the only reason we put on the plan to be deeded to Lot 8B is to make it very clear that it's not a separate building lot.
Okay. So there isn't going to be another building going on there, is what you're saying?
Correct. Never. No.
Okay. All right. And then the other thing was the plan, and maybe this was just because of the copy that we received, but the seal and signature of the land surveyor are not on there.
On the Mylar?
I can confirm that it's on the Mylar.
Okay.
You're right. It's not on the electronic copy we received.
Terrific.
Correct.
Well, I think we're ready to go then.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right. Do we need a motion for the A&R?
I'll make a motion to
You
approve.
can offer
the
it.
I make a motion to approve the A&R.
Lot A, so the other lot, sure. I'll second that.
Maren, did you get that?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor, let's vote. Ms. Laterzo,
yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Ms. Houston, yes.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
Thank you for waiting, Sherry.
No problem.
All right, so that leaves us just with board business. And we did not have an opportunity to have public input, so I don't know if there's even anybody still left out there.
No. Yes, there are 3 people.
All right, does anybody have
No,
any
no,
public
now they're
comment?
gone.
They're leaving quickly.
Oh,
That is too funny. That's like watching them walk out the door, right?
yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, no public input. Member updates. Ms. Laterzo, MPIC and train station.
So train station, as I said, Mark, I'll email you because what we want to do is get the whole group together sooner rather than later to discuss next steps on the, the report that Judy delivered to us a couple weeks ago. So
Just let me know when I'm available.
yeah. Okay. So Maren, I think we've heard from everybody then. I mean, so we'll come up with a date, probably the end of July, I think. I'll have to go back through everybody's emails and see, because Cindy and Chuck replied, so we can get that on the schedule.
Mhm. Yep. The only 2 questions I've heard about it is it's staffing. We need to make sure we know who's staffing that working group. And then the other one is on public input. I've heard comment that residents are very interested in what the working group is doing and would like some wider visibility in the working groups.
Yeah, and I think that's something we definitely have to discuss because here we took all this time gathering their input. We had those public sessions, and now it just kind of has disappeared. So that's again what I'd like to discuss when we get together.
Yep. Great.
And anything on MPIC?
So I was not able to attend the last meeting. So Maren, I think, I know that we're looking for an application or applications for other members to join, because I believe Mike Zeldin is stepping down. And then
Yes.
Mike Fontanella's position open as well.
Let's see. Mike Zeldin is stepping down, so there will be an opening. Mike Fontanella is expecting to remain on the board. He's the appointee from the school board.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I believe he expects to re-up.
Okay.
So at least there is one opening, at least one opening if we don't lose anybody else.
Have we received any applications?
I have not heard if the selectmen received any applications.
Okay.
Yeah, but I believe there's still an opening, if I understand.
Okay.
Great. Mr. Montanari, Affordable Housing, 5G.
We met last month and we talked about taking some of the money that Affordable Housing Trust has to buy, to go in with the town on buying the Brown property, to try to keep it as open space and maybe a building lot out there. So we're working through that. We're also still going on with the voucher program and with emergency funding for people that have been affected by the COVID. So we're meeting every month and we're getting stuff done. But actually, the board's doing well.
Terrific. Thank you. Jerry, we heard about TDR and anything else? Nope. Okay. Yep. Jeff, you don't have any outside committees yet?
No, but if this is my last meeting, I want to say how much I've enjoyed the last.
Don't say that.
Say that, Jeff.
And that's you guys are pretty productive. I think you should be, and Maren should be pleased.
No, this is not your swan song. Get out there, kiss some baby. Come on.
Well, everybody get your friends out to vote. Friends, neighbors, everybody.
Oh, also, I want to say compliment you, Anna, about the town meeting.
I was just going to say that.
I thought your presentation was excellent.
You did a very good
job. That was the most pleasant town meeting I've ever been to. And I don't know what, but there was no organized opposition. And it was, the whole board for this whole process of promoting this should pat past and present should pat themselves on the back.
Anna did a great job at town meeting. She really handled it well, had a great presentation, very good, and made all the opposition stay at home.
Well, and I want to say that I think what has impressed me most watching this whole process is, Anna, the amount of time you put into this, and the fact that, and this ties into what you were saying to Jerry about TDR, the fact that you've reached out to all key stakeholders to get them involved early on, which I think then you're more likely to have buy-in and less likely to have opposition. So kudos on, to you and Maren and everybody else.
Well, thanks. And yes, kudos to Maren. And I would say thank you to you all for, again, asking the tough questions that kept us making sure that we were answering them. I did want to also say that Maren and I both attended the TAC meeting last night and Transportation Advisory Committee, and there was a discussion there including a motion to recommend to the select board to accept a $10,000 donation by Workers Credit Union. And that is a donation to be made for Crosstown Connect's operations of the shuttle. And so there was discussion, and it looks like when life resumes and the shuttle gets started again, that could be put to good use. And that was the recommendation from TAC. The other thing that they're doing, just as an FYI, is they are looking at creating a report, if you will, on bicycle accessibility, bicycle lanes in the town that will go to Chris Stoddard so that he can include that in his plans. Is that correct, Mara?
Right.
Did I get that right? Okay. Yeah. Anything else that we should report from TAC?
No, but I got a question. Are we getting any money for the complete streets that we did? Does anybody know?
Yes,
We are?
yeah, yeah.
For the what streets?
Complete
Complete
street.
streets.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah, it's-
DPW's been applying for and spending the complete streets funds for the last, 3 years, I think.
What are complete streets?
I have a lovely poster I'll send you a copy of.
Okay.
So I actually have a question on that, man.
Mhm.
Is there any way we could get an update from them on like what their plans are from, I think one of the requirements was like you had to be able to walk to all the schools on a sidewalk,
Safe routes to school.
safe routes to school.
Right.
And I think
That's
we had
another
something-
funding mechanism.
Yep. And I
Mhm.
think we had we were going to try and do something with that at some point. Did we
They
ever?
they did build the one along Russell Street, which,
But that was Sam Park, right? I mean, that was his 64,000.
But no, that didn't,
I think
that
he benefited.
took the sidewalk a little way, but the
Yeah,
complete
did we
streets
do the rest? Yeah.
complete streets did some.
All right, good. Yeah. No, I was just wondering if they could give us just an update, like what's happened, what happened with the money, what were the improvements?
Mhm.
I
Yep,
think
I'll ask.
that's a good idea, especially maybe we can tie it into the Littleton Common Revitalization Committee work as well as getting an update to be able to see how that would then get incorporated with what is going to happen in the common at some point in the future. Great. The last thing I wanted to mention as chair, it is that time of year when the planning board needs to input to Marin's performance review. So I'll be reaching out to each of you about that process and getting that done with town administrator. So just so you know. Then let's move on to 1C, which is minutes. We have the minutes from April 23rd. Are there any comments or questions? I see heads shaking no.
I read them and
Nope. Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to accept the minutes
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
of April 23rd, 2020? Okay.
Okay.
Second. All right. And let's vote. Ms. Laterzo,
yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yep.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Ms. Houston. Yes. Okay. So we voted on minutes, and then finally bills and payroll. So based on the authority provided to me by the planning board, I approved the planning department payroll for June 1st through the 14th, and I have not paid any bills since our last planning board meeting. Okay, so there we are. So our next meeting is Thursday, July 9th. Is that right?
Correct.
Do we have a time set for that, for a start time?
6:30 seems to work for most. Is that going to hold for the 9th? Good.
That's 6:30 safe. Yeah.
6:30 is good. All righty. So I know that between now and then we have point people working on different things. So please keep me apprised. And if there isn't anything else, then I guess we can adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
and good luck on Saturday. And
Jeff.
Thank you.
my vote is a yes to adjourn. So thank you.
Thank you all.